Okay, we're going to make our back legs, and these are a little bit tricky, so go ahead and make that slip knot, chain 2, and then coming back to the first stitch, you're going to do 6 single crochets, 1 in that same stitch, 2, and that hole will get bigger, but you can tighten it down when you're done. 3, there's 4, 5, and 6. You go to the next stitch and you'll do 2 single crochets in that stitch. And then we're going to start the claw. So we'll slip stitch in the next stitch, chain 2, slip stitch in the second, chain from the hook, and then we're going to go slip stitch straight through that hole again, chain 2, slip stitch in the second chain from the hook, and then go back into that hole, slip stitch again, chain 2, slip stitch back in to the second chain from the hook. So we've made 3 little claws here that we're going to define in the next round. We're going to do 2 single crochets in the next 2 stitches. And then we're just going to single crochet back around to our first claw. Now that's not what the pattern says, but trust me, this is going to work better. Now, take 1 more stitch. We should be right before that first claw. Then we're going to come between the 2 claws and define them by taking our yarn on the outside of the claw and slip stitch. Then we go to the next one, and again we keep our yarn on the outside of the claw, and we slip stitch, and then we come in, take a stitch, come to the next claw, slide through with a slip stitch, then take a stitch, come around the next claw with a slip stitch, and take a stitch. And you see how you've defined the 3 claws. And after that, we're going to stitch. In the round, actually. Again, remember how hard it is to get one into a stitch when you've slip stitched the previous stitch. So just do the best that you can. The next round will be much easier. Now again, I want you to ignore your pattern, and we are simply going to stitch around in every stitch for a few rows. The pattern has you decrease, and I did that on my other leg and it just did not work well. So I pulled it out and just straight stitched in the round until my leg was long enough to attach to my dinosaur. I know these are hard, and for those of you who have tried these on your own, I really applaud you, because this has been quite the ordeal. And kind of true to her patterns, I have not found the patterns to be exactly right for the design she creates. So I'm not sure what happens from her amazing designs to the actual typing of the pattern, but I have found flaws in almost every one that I have worked on. Just keep stitching around. Make sure that you don't decrease the size of your opening. If it looks like it's decreasing, go ahead and add an additional stitch by crocheting 2 times in one stitch. It really helps to pinch your work as you go around, because that way you're always working in the next stitch and you can kind of see it as you go around. So you can see I just keep working my stitches and pinching it. I already have one leg done and on the dragon because it was very time consuming, and I'm only filming the completion and sewing on of one leg. But what I'll do is make sure that both of my legs are the same length before I sew this second leg on. Feel free to follow her pattern exactly, but for me it did not work. So if you like my modifications, be sure and make a comment in the comments below and let me know what you thought. Or if you followed her pattern exactly, let me know how that turned out for you. Still have a few more rounds to go so that it's the same length as the other leg that I've already put on. And see how those little claws stick right out there. Let's see how we're doing. I think that that's about as long as I want to make it. Now, one thing I didn't do on the other one is I didn't leave a long enough tail, so I'm going to cut off a little bit more this time. Pull it through, call it good. And for this opening, before I stuff the leg, I just want to pull this to the inside so that we don't have to deal with it as we're tying on the leg. And I don't even have to cut it off. I can just go ahead and leave it long and stuff it right back inside. Now all I'm going to do is add some stuffing and we'll be ready to sew this leg on. Stuffing is definitely a personal preference. But the other thing I learned when I did the other leg is you do not want to close this up. You're going to want to sew in the round as you attach this leg to Norbert. Just adjusting my stuffing so that the legs are similar in size. I'll go ahead and thread my needle. But what I want you to do is I want you to set your leg where you want it on the body, and then I just want you to stitch around so that your leg opening is actually open up against the body, if that makes sense. You won't see the opening because you're going to stitch it evenly around. But in order to give some stability and the proper look to the leg, you have to stitch around rather than pinching that opening closed. Sometimes, like if you watched when we did like Harry Potter or any of those, we pinched open or we pinched closed the arm to stitch it onto the body. But we want to do exactly the opposite with this leg. We don't want that pinched closed, and we want to stitch in a big wide circle. And again, the book doesn't tell you this, but this is the better way to attach the leg. When you get back to your starting point, whether that was in the front or the back, you can just go ahead and tie off the leg. Same as we have with the other pieces, just take some nice stitches in here as you would if you were sewing, and lock that end in tight, and then we'll slide it up through the body. Now we have our legs and wings on Norbert. The last thing we need to do is make the tail.